This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me. We've got a lot to get to as SMU landed multiple commitments from the Pony Express weekend. But before we talk about that, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com. Go to David Henry and his team for all of your private jet chartering needs. Give them a call, 866-939-5330, and talk about the options you have for this summer, where you can go, how quickly you can get there, teaming up with family, friends, and more to get to these destinations to make it work for you with StatusJet. There are some of the most incredible places in the entire world accessible only by private jet, and they've got some ideas for you, whether it's tropical, whether it's European vacation. They can come up with all sorts of details and plans for your itinerary for your very special trip on StatusJet. Use code PonyUpACC or mention On the Pony Express for a discount on a round-trip flight with StatusJet. Well, Rhett Lashley told On3's Steve Wiltfong going into the weekend that the Mustangs were going to have some fun with the Pony Express weekend. And let me tell you, it wasn't your typical official visit weekend. Pretty much all of these prospects that visited SMU had been to campus before at least once, mostly multiple times. And so they weren't going to do the traditional, okay, sit through team meeting, sit through a complete campus tour, sit through many of the initial presentations that you might see on some official visit weekends. They were going to have some fun with it. They were going to start off with a big photo shoot with cars in Armstrong Fieldhouse and the national championship and Heisman trophies out on display. They were going to make it about family and fun on that Friday night, bringing them all together for dinner and kicking off the weekend in Armstrong Fieldhouse with, like I said, the photo shoot and then an introductory meeting with everybody on campus and getting to dinner out and about the city of Dallas. And then Saturday, they hung out at the hotel. They shacked up at the JW Marriott just around downtown, hung out by the pool, did meetings, took people over to the brand new Gary Weber End Zone complex that is nearing completion. They did some other campus things over there. They had some meetings with their coaches, but really it was about having fun. Once again, I know I keep circling that word, but this was a visit weekend that was not about being down and dirty with business. It was about being real and authentic. And I think the staff nailed that as well with their life after ball, not presentation, but panel. They brought back former players like Chris Lowe from the basketball team, Delano Robinson, Mike Williams, some of the kind of successful stories that we've heard about with SMU athletes going on to do things great away from the field as well. So they did some of that. And then Saturday night went to Reunion Tower, had the whole place rented out for a private meal with the coaches, with the sports staff, some current players, family, friends, all those things were invited in for that. And then players went out with their player hosts and coaches went out with the parents as well. And then Sunday wrapped up the official visit weekend with some final meetings with position coaches and Rhett Lashley. And SMU stayed hot. They had already received a commitment Friday night, Saturday night, got 2 more on Sunday. So a successful weekend for SMU. To kind of hit the reset button, they now sit with the 22nd ranked overall class in the country, according to the On3 industry team rankings. And look, they have a chance to climb. These recruiting class rankings will be updated over the course of time. We'll see some of these prospects get bumps. I mean, some of them, if they have certain seasons, we'll see them maybe dip a little bit. But that's the crazy thing about recruiting. It is a little fluid. But we will continue to track it all at On the Pony Express for you. But let's dive into the prospects that made decisions for the Mustangs and were opting to go ahead and commit to the program. And let's lead off with the guy that got it started, a guy that we're really, really high on here at On3. And I was talking with Cody Belair, our national recruiting scout, and he said, my birthday weekend was great, Billy. Thanks for asking. But it just makes me feel even better about my birthday weekend that Xavier Johnson pledged to the good guys. Xavier Johnson, the 2025 wide receiver out of Richland High School, Cle Reyes high school. SMU's hoping to strike gold in terms of a star wide receiver with Xavier Johnson, who is one of the better receivers in the country. I know you see 3-star and you think, how good is that? 88, 89, we're seeing at the very initial jumping off point here with Xavier that he's somebody who could really end up being a NFL type of player. Little undrafted projection right now, but I think when you look at what he brings to the table, averaging around 24 yards per catch throughout his career, he's got a chance to be a real star. And with Xavier Johnson jumping on board Friday night, he actually did it at the introduction meeting. He signed the rock, which is something Rhett Lashley and his staff are really pushing this recruiting class to, jump on and work through, or not work through, but to join the class, you need to sign the rock. And that's exactly what they've really, started with and trying to push that. And I think for SMU to kick off the weekend with Xavier Johnson, it gave a lot of credibility to the weekend right off the bat. They felt like they were good in a good spot with him. That Rhett Lashley and his staff were pushing for him, and we mentioned him going into the weekend that somebody that could be on commitment watch, and he did just that, jumping on board. We have him as the 87th best receiver in the country. He's got a chance to finish among the best, in my opinion, in the state of Texas. Again, you look at his production, look at what he was able to do on the field last year, and there's a lot to like. I told you guys a story about he's got the strongest handshake I've ever encountered from a prospect. So he's got strong hands. He's smooth with the football. So Rob Lycan scored a big recruiting win over Baylor, over TCU, over Texas Tech, and others to kick off this recruiting weekend. And SMU is thrilled to have Xavier Johnson on board. Once again, SMU went out west to land an offensive lineman, and Drew Hill out of Corona Centennial High School is the latest to jump on board. And now another prospect who continues the Polynesian pipeline that SMU is starting to build, but also look at the programs on his offer list that SMU was able to beat out: Arizona State, Miami, Duke, Utah, Stanford, and numerous others. I think he's somebody that is a little slept on in terms of a ranking. And I know offensive linemen and, prospects that are maybe just kind of under the radar in general don't get enough, overall pub. But you look at his offer list, and it's a real strong one for Xavier Hill. And so Garen Justice, after scoring, more of a sleeper in Jacob Mayava last week, gets a big national recruiting win. And I've said this before, I think Garen Justice is quietly one of the better recruiters on staff, because Drew Hill was another one that we projected and expected SMU to land as a result of this weekend. And Saturday, he went ahead and did just that, announcing his commitment to the Mustangs. So they land another key piece of the future of that offensive line. Again, that's 2 offensive linemen that are now committed to the Mustangs in the class of 2025. And overall, this class stands at 13 commitments. It's 5th in the ACC. And the Mustangs got off to a big start with those 2 guys committing early on in the weekend. Before we dive into the Sunday fireworks and some new On3 RPM picks, do want to remind you guys to check out our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team. Dallas Love Field has one of the largest private jet groups in the entire country in terms of the amount of volume we see out of Dallas Love Field. And for those of you who are here locally, StatusJet can certainly help you capitalize on that and improve your business travel. If you're traveling with associates and need to get in and out for a quick meeting, whether that's by private jet or helicopter, by the way, or you can reach out to them about planning your next travel and looking ahead to football season, saying, hey, what trips can we build around some of these games for the Mustangs? Well, go to statusjet.com, fill out their contact form, or give them a call and remind them about code PonyUpACC, or that you learned about them from ontheponyexpress.com, and they'll be sure to hook you up with a discount on a round trip flight. Can't count that out when it comes to flying on a private jet. So SMU solidified the secondary in a big way on Sunday with the 2 commitments that SMU landed. And look, some high-profile recruiting battles once again being won by this coaching staff, and both of these commitments had SEC offers. Zay Gentry, though, opted not to wait much longer than his official visit, committing to the Mustangs. And the big thing with Zay is SMU overcame a lot of momentum from Baylor, Missouri, Oklahoma State, and Wisconsin to beat those programs out. Missouri was really surging. I put in an on 3 RPM pick for Zay Gentry to end up there, but this official visit really wowed him, and SMU's coaching staff really stepped up. Here's what he said about Ricky Hundley and Scott Simons earlier this spring. He said, SMU's really great. My connection with Coach Hundley and Coach Simons is great. They're keeping in touch, and there's a home they're a home state kind of program in parentheses there, that me adding in. So that feels great, honestly. What stands out is if I can come in and have an effect early, that just makes the program a lot higher on my list. SMU losing corners after next season. We know they're going to lose Jahari Rogers. Who knows kind of what the opportunity looks like for some of these young corners. And I mean, look, Zay Gentry needs a little bit of a weight room. He is somebody that I think is going to benefit from a college program in a big way. I think for SMU to get him on board is a big recruiting win. He's kind of on the cusp of being a 4-star prospect. He was, I believe, started off as a top 50 prospect, but he's still got the frame that you like as an outside corner. It's about adding more weight to his frame and getting him stronger that can really help him in the long term and really give SMU somebody they can rely on the outside there. SMU wasn't done in the secondary. We know they had 3 commitments at the safety position going into the weekend, but the Mustangs have now been able to reel in another safety. I got a text from a source on Monday morning, and it said, man, they really got 4 safety commits right now? I said, yes, they do. How? Well, they're losing multiple safeties after this season, and who knows, if Isaiah Wacobia or Ahmad Moses absolutely balls out, maybe they move on to the NFL. But they got Cle Reyes out of DeSoto High School. He's a St. Louis native, but plays for the DeSoto Eagles, won a state championship there this year, one of the better safeties in the country. On 3 has him as a top 40 safety in the country. Miami, Missouri, Texas A&M, plenty of other programs that SMU beat out for Cle Reyes. And he's got some good lineage as well. His brother played at Texas A&M, and Scott Simons really turned up the heat there for the Mustangs to land him, and they were able to get him on board. He never really formally tweeted out that SMU offer, but they were able to reel him in, and he had some major offers and had an official visit planned to Miami, but instead SMU was able to get him to jump on board. He likes the facilities, likes that SMU's moving to the ACC, and really feels like SMU is building a program in the right direction. So a big land for Scott Simons there. That completes his safety haul. And I tell you what, for them to, put together this type of a group, it really says a lot about the trust that a lot of these players have when it comes to this coaching staff and what they really have put together, because they just recruit really, really well. And the offensive side of the ball, they've done a nice job in terms of building up a lot of momentum. And we've seen them address the offensive line. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And now they have Jacob Mayaba, who's kind of the future, I would say, at center. Drew Hill is going to be more of an interior guy, could be center. And SMU has Xavier Johnson and Dalen Singleton as well. And honestly, I mean, just as a 2 wide receiver haul, that would be nice. You have Kelen Russell, who's your quarterback, obviously, as well. And we'll talk about him in just a second. But SMU is building momentum, and there's no better way to build momentum and to build buzz than our man, Steve Wiltfong, logging on 3 RPM picks for you. And the Mustangs are staying hot in that regard. A couple I want to highlight for you guys. One would be Jalen Cooper, the 4-star wide receiver, really had a terrific official visit to SMU. They really stood out in a big way with what they were able to do for him and his family, just kind of impressing them with obviously the depth chart. I mean, losing as many receivers as SMU does. He also added that the environment was great. The coaching staff did a great job making feel everybody welcome, and they have a lot of momentum going into the ACC, and I think they can win it all. That's pretty incredible in terms of having that type of a faith in what SMU's selling, that they could, do that. And I do feel like, guys like Jalen Cooper that SMU's invested a lot of time and energy in, it's really important that they land them. And that's the difference between what SMU has in terms of, or has in terms of a good start to its class. But when you land a guy that is in the top 150 overall prospects that led all of 6A in Texas in touchdowns last year, those are where you start getting into the difference-making type of players that you can bring in that elevate your program as a whole. So SMU did pick up the on 3 RPM lead there for Jalen Cooper. Caleb Burns at linebacker. Maurice Crum is making him a big priority. And SMU set the bar very high. I expect him to for SMU to make his top schools when he does drop them here in the near future, as he kind of whittles things down in his recruitment. I think if he made his decision today, SMU would be the leader. He said it felt like home, and the momentum in the right direction really excites him. They are the next big thing in the ACC, he said. And so, again, if you're not at ontheponyexpress.com, subscribe for just $1 for your first 2 months using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1, and get access to all the coverage from Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons, and then our entire crew at ontheponyexpress.com. Xavier Johnson is another one that is now trending for the Mustangs on the on 3 RPM. I think we'll see SMU potentially pick up more steam here. Texas A&M, that visit at the end of the month of June looms large for sure, but I do like where SMU stands in this recruitment. I just think they've done a really nice job setting the bar very high for him. And so we'll see if the Mustangs can continue to make a move in that recruitment and end up, landing him. And so I think they've done a really good job sharing how big of a priority Xavier Johnson is for them when it comes to the future at that edge position. So we've got a ton of reaction, a ton of coverage at ontheponyexpress.com for the On the Pony Express weekend, but I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the best prospects in the entire country, and that is SMU quarterback commit Kelen Russell, who wrapped up his official visit on Sunday, and the Mustangs really impressed him. He said he had an amazing time. This program is really built on relationships when it comes to where he feels like it stands for him. I mean, that's where it starts. He was able to spend more time with players like Keldrick Luster and Kevin Jennings, who would most certainly be in the quarterback room with him when he's there. If he does, in fact, stick to this commitment, which he said he's going to take his Alabama, Florida, Oregon visits. But SMU really impressed him at the same time, and he was able to, get a better feel around the players and what he'd be walking into. His mom, April, tweeted that, they talked about business and things like that on the trip. I mean, this is a visit for him that really was big overall. You got a feel for life after ball, probably got a little bit of a feel for NIL and where that could factor in for the Mustangs. Some of these other programs that are going to host him are certainly going to have to, look into that with him, because he is a top 10 quarterback. He's a top 100 prospect. But make no mistake, SMU is right in the thick of this in terms of keeping him. And anytime you're battling in Alabama, Florida, and Ole Miss and Oregon, you're not necessarily hesitant or pessimistic, but you have to obviously keep it real that, Keelon has kept an open recruitment, and he has, looked at these programs pretty seriously, and he's going to take official visits there. So no one on SMU side is discounting where Kelen Russell stands with them in terms of the other programs that are now in the mix and working on him. But they felt like they put a terrific foot forward, and they feel like they have set themselves up to potentially keep him. And that's all you can ask for coming off this official visit. It's not like any official visit in all likelihood that he's going to take. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of bonding. It was a lot of building relationships even stronger. And he's continuously come back to SMU. He hasn't disappeared, and they just got him on campus for his official visit. He was at the spring game. He was on campus in January recruiting for the Mustangs, even as he's picked up steam overall. So, Kelen Russell is a hot button one for this recruiting class, but I still feel like SMU sits in a decent spot to keep him. And that's honestly all you can ask for at this stage. So we'll continue to track him in terms of the visits he does make, and if he does in fact make all of them. But SMU has a need to sign a star quarterback like this. They have a path to playing time. Kevin Jennings has showed that. Keldrick Luster got in on the action last year. And if you're Kelen Russell, there's a natural progression. And this is no disrespect to Keldrick Luster, but if SMU's bringing him in, they're bringing him in to be the next guy. And whether it's Preston Stone or Kevin Jennings, who ends up, being the dude this year for SMU, obviously we'll see how it goes between either guys staying healthy or production or whatnot. But Kelen Russell has a path to playing time. There are kind of roadblocks here and there at other schools that aren't there at SMU. And the Mustangs just recruiting this level of a talented passer could very well see him playing early in the long run. And I'm sure that is something that they're at least talking about. Nothing's promised at SMU. I do believe that. But SMU has done a really nice job managing this quarterback room. And I think the realness with the coaching staff could very well carry the day. What Keelan's going to have to decide, and it's going to be something to watch, is do you not get caught up in, I don't want to say the flash, because Oregon produced a Heisman Trophy finalist. They have, one of the more iconic brands in college football. They have Rashad Samples, who's got close ties to Duncanville, as we know. Then you have Ole Miss, who's recruited him for a while. They have Lane Kiffin in that offense. They have, the SEC atmosphere. You've got Alabama. They've got the SEC atmosphere. They've certainly got the pedigree, even with the new coaching staff. They've developed Michael Penix. And then you have Florida, who, it's the SEC. But Billy Napier's on thin ice. I've always said this. Out of all the ones in terms of this race, Alabama and maybe even Oregon, but particularly Alabama is the one that really stands out to me, is SMU's going to have to weather that storm. That's a big visit, big stadium, historic, all those things. And if they can come out the other side and him end up saying, you know what, I'm going to be the hometown hero. I stick with where I've committed. I've got good relationships. I can play an exciting offense. NIL is going to be fine. Family's going to be able to see me all the time. This is where I want to be. Great. But he's going to have to weigh that against playing home games in front of 85, 90,000 people in most cases for those schools that he's involved with. So I do feel like SMU's put the best foot forward they can with him. They continue to show him how big of a priority it is. And that was one of the bigger pieces of this weekend overall. So he enjoyed himself. His family enjoyed himself. That was big to see. We have a ton of inside information at ontheponyexpress.com, and we're only getting going. This week is pretty much all recruiting. And so be sure to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com for just $1 for 2 months using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1. Again, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. Join the message board. It's so much fun there. And we'll be talking about it all week. So I'm going to have Steve Wiltfong on later this week. He'll dive into some of his reactions from the weekend as well. And we'll do an insider podcast on kind of the same thing we did last week going into the weekend. We'll break down every recruit that was on campus this weekend and where things stand. So hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Appreciate you guys hitting that subscribe button to the YouTube channel as well. We will catch you guys later this week with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU_on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.